Or
My
hello?
like, what do you want? It's my favorite.
Hello?
They're not happy about it. They've got to go back another day. It's like, well,
It's squeezing the juice, man. You gotta, at each point of this, there are more.
so we keep on calling them for our clients and we attempt to reschedule.
You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Do me a favor. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, comment, leave us a review, do all that stuff. If you want to take the conversation beyond what you're just listening to here, go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success, and join the Roofing Success Podcast group. I did an episode some time ago with a guy named Jason Phillips from Phillips Roofing and Painting down in the DFW. And Jason talked about there were two sales that needed to be made in the sales process of a roofing customer. And he said, first you need to sell the appointment, then you sell the job. And I thought, man, that was really a prolific statement to me, because I know it intrinsically, but I just, like, the way when he said it, I was like, wow, that the two sales, right? And so I think that's where a lot of contractors fail, is on that initial sale. We see it all the time in our agency. We listen to every phone call that comes through our clients' businesses, and we see, man, some of them, like, they'll answer the phone and it's like, yeah, I'll have John call you back sometime, someday, and get you on the schedule. That's not the way to deal with it. Then we have other contractors that are structured so well that they're just booking the appointment right on the spot. And then they have an internal person that dispositions the appointments to their sales team, which is much, much, much more efficient. And the closing rates between those different kinds of companies, the different styles of that, varies tremendously, right? Like, there is a big gap between the people who book the appointment on the initial call to the ones who kind of push off the appointment, or even if they answer their phone or at all, right? So I wanted to bring my buddy James Baskin on from Outsource Kings. James builds call centers and manages call centers for roofing contractors and other trades. James, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. Yourself. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem, man. So for our audience, give us a little background on your experience and building Outsource Kings and what you guys do.
Yeah, so background originally for myself was I was running an insurance agency, and I had a ton of leads, had a ton of clients, customers calling in, didn't have time to answer the calls, didn't have time to call back leads that I was generating online. And I started marketing my service, or I should say, I started using it internally. And then we had a bunch of people in all kinds of different industries that started asking us. It wasn't all right away, but we had a bunch of different people, and a lot of them were contractors, actually, and marketers that worked with contractors, saying, hey, can you call leads for my clients? And so we started doing that. And then bit by bit, it was always different little things people wanted to add on, to the point now where, we're going in their, job nimbus, we're going in, we're, in their CRM, making the phone calls, updating the status, updating everything inside of the client's CRM, and even answering their phone calls as if it's like a virtual front desk.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's what, we're in a mastermind group together, and we were chatting about this, and it's such a big problem to solve. So I wanted to have you on here today and have this conversation about how contractors can solve this in their businesses. And, what are kind of some of the first things that you would look at if you're trying to put together, if you want to call it a call center in your business?
Wow. Yeah. I would first document your own SOPs. Where do you guys keep your leads at? I would find the holes to plug first versus just, hey, let's hire a call center and it's going to solve everything. You don't want to throw money at a problem that you don't even know what the problem is, right?
Mm.
So I would first find out where the holes are to be plugged, and been working with contractors long enough. I can already tell you some things to look for. Is first, how long does it take for you all to follow up with the lead? A lot of times from contractors that are even doing an okay job, they tell us, well, I follow up at the end of the day and I follow up first thing in the morning. And that's not even a great job at all, really. It's just like they're at least doing something. And then I would look at how many times do you even call the leads? Are you documenting and tracking this? What I mean by that is like, is it one phone call and then you move on to the next if they're not interested? So how many times, frequency, and then how fast, speed are going to be the first two things.
So I like that because a lot of times it's like we're just looking for that magic pill, right? Like something's not happening, man. Let's just throw money at it or do this or hope that someone else can solve our problem. But taking the time to reflect on that. So if you're not tracking your calls, that might be something that you want to start doing initially too, right? Looking, using call tracking systems call tracking metrics, CallRail, our software contractor boost, like any of these systems that you can use to track these inbound calls. And then in your CRMs, kind of determining where's this going? How long did it take? Take some time to go back and reflect on that because those may be some easy wins, right? Just easy wins right there. Hey, we got a gap to fill right here. We're not following up more than twice on a lead, right? Like
there's a million different things that I remind myself that I'm speaking to the contractor, not Jim right now, but I'm also speaking to Jim because me and Jim can talk marketing forever and really in-depth stuff. As a contractor, you can get distracted with all these different things of, optimizing your GMB, your Facebook ads, your, whatever social media content profile. But I'll say this, if no one in your office, including yourself, never answers the phone, the inbound call that comes in, which is also, by the way, my prediction currently in 2023 right now, that it's the hottest lead is the inbound phone call. That inbound phone call, someone found you online, referral, wherever it comes from, no one answers the phone. That person doesn't know you. They're going to go somewhere else right away because they have a very important need. I've got a hole in my roof. It's leaking. Like there's a hailstorm that just happened. We need someone to come out. And my sister Mary, it's hilarious, said, call Jim, call James. Yeah. He's going to fix it. And then you don't answer your phone. Not that, you're not busy with something else that's important, but like no one in your office answers that phone call. Those people have an urgent need. They're going to go somewhere else. And it's like, we focus, and I see it all the time with marketers and construction companies specifically that focus on all these different things like, oh, I got to get my Twitter bio right. And it's like, you don't even answer your phone.
It amazes me. There's been statistics done, studies done. I remember one, it was like 50% of people go with the first person they talk to, right? Like, so just by picking up the phone, just by being the first to do that inspection, to give that estimate, whatever, right? Being the first, 50% of people automatically just go with you like that, and then 70% of people have made like most of the decision to go with you before they even make that phone call. So they're on your Google reviews. They look at your website. They heard from a friend or family member like you're saying, right? And now when they make that phone call, if that phone call isn't treated well, the trust just diminishes greatly right there at that point. At that point, and that's when you're losing money. When people, contractors, when we have conversations with them and they're like, my marketing budgets, I can't believe I invested this much in marketing and I didn't get the return. And I'm like, okay, so let's start looking through the full customer journey. not just at the specific lead source. Now, you do want your specific lead source to be performing at its at an optimal level. But if you're not taking it through the process, all the way through, if your sales reps aren't following up, if you're, all of these things will lower your return on investment. So you'd mentioned something. So we're talking about first determine your stats, look through and maybe develop some KPIs, right? That you can track on an ongoing basis is what I thought of when you were talking about that. So maybe the KPI is percentage of calls, appointments booked on the initial phone call, right? Like, so that may be a KPI and you want to be above, 60% or 80% or whatever your number might be. And then you may want to look at after the initial inspection, how many times that sales rep followed up. Like, that may be a KPI that they need to report to you on every single lead that they're running for your business. How many times did they follow up? And you can have that at 8, 10. I did a podcast episode with a guy. They have they were at 24 touches. But they got creative with it too. They would send different things, and they got real creative. Like, how can you follow up 24 times? You're just going to annoy someone. They just got real creative with it. And now I think the other part of it, what you were talking about, is how it flows into and through your CRM. Whether you are using an outside service like your guys' service, or doing it internally. Making sure that it flows through your CRM and through your process as well. Speak to that a little bit about how you guys are, or just what you think are best practices. I mean, you work in JobNimbus a lot. You work in the CRMs in the industry. What do you see, and how do you structure that? What are some of the best practices there?
Yeah, so one of the first things that I look at is, what is the contractor currently doing? And I try to take the approach of, the customer knows best versus I know what's best for the customer in some aspects, right? Obviously, the customer's hiring me for support, but I'm not trying to create more work for a customer. I'm not trying to make a customer learn a whole new CRM. I'm not trying to make them have to, document everything in the Google spreadsheets or whatever. We do all that for the customer, and we go inside of their JobNimbus or whatever CRM that we're in, and my team is documenting. They're more in JobNimbus than I am. Obviously, my team is doing the work, and I'm working with the customer to make sure that we, meet their needs and help them with that. And so we go in there and we ask them how they want us to keep track of it. What things do you want us to update? Oh, hey, can you actually update the lead inside of this CRM and also inside of my JobNimbus? Sure, no problem. It's one of those things like the customer's right kind of thing, but we need to know like what right looks like for them.
So yeah, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different process. That's one of the things. So when you're thinking about some of the more successful contractors that you're working with, what are some things that stick out in their process versus others?
Well, it really depends on the size of the company. I could, compare a small company to a large, company that we're working with. But I think, I want to, keep it the small to medium-sized business, because that's a lot of the people we work with, is the willingness to accept help versus thinking they know what's best. It doesn't come down to some super technical skill set that they have or anything like that. It's the willingness to be like, hey, you know what? Let's do what you think is best versus, and you probably dealt with this, where it's like the client wants to tell you how to do the targeting on Facebook, and they want to tell you what ad to run. And it's like, hey, look, this is what we do. For me, it's like, hey, here's some examples of scripts that we've done. We recommend doing a call reminder before you go out to the home. And then, perfect example, every time we have a roofer that's like, don't call them before you go out to the home. It's like, well, historically, we've shown that the show up rate of the customer being home when we do a call reminder, and that you only go out, because a lot of times, we do a 50-mile radius. So it's not like you're driving down the street. It's like, this is a 50-mile radius that we're doing for our clients with the marketers we work with, or even their own leads, because they don't want to drive more than 50 miles. And so, we tell them, hey, look, we're going to do a call reminder. And the ones that are like, hey, you know what, that sounds great. That's perfect. Let's do that. those people, guess what? The people that don't answer the phone and don't confirm, we don't keep the appointment for them. The people, the customers, I'm talking about the lead is for the roofer. The ones that do confirm, guess what? When the roofer goes out there, that client's home. And like clockwork, every time we don't do that, the roofer that told us not to do a confirmation call is like, no one showed up, no one's home. And it's like, well, this is our process of how we recommend. We still want to follow what you think is best, but when it comes to phone calls, this is like our territory. And so the willingness to accept help. And I think a lot of it is just, as myself included, and I can't speak for you, Jim, but like letting someone else have control of some part of your business is a very hard thing to do.
It is, for sure. But there's the little things like those call reminders, right? And that's, now, or appointment reminder calls, right? So now when you have that appointment reminder call, you have confirmation that your sales rep is efficiently using their time. Because if they do get out to that house, or you or your sales rep, if you're doing the sales for your company, it's an efficient use of time to make sure that you've gotten to that, that appointment is set, but also that appointment shows. That's, a couple of hours when you're talking about drive time, right? So getting efficiency in those things. So when you guys do that, do you just say, hey, if the person doesn't confirm, no one goes out? Is that what you would recommend?
That's what we recommend. There's a lot of moving parts of that, and I want to cover one part because we're mentioning the appointment reminder calls, and I'll tell you guys a quick story after I answer your question. Sorry. So we recommend doing an appointment reminder call, and we even check to see if the people text in to the CRM, like maybe they text in and say, hey, we can make it, stuff like that. A lot of our roofers at this point, because the show up rate with self-booking, which would be automation in today's day and age, as we call it, the show up rate with automation is atrocious.
Yeah.
And we even have a lot of people we work with that won't even take self-bookings. Like there needs to be a phone call that's a part of it, or else they won't even take the appointment. Because, we love to showcase, these awesome KPI metrics, numbers. If anyone's wondering what KPI is, it's just basically a number that shows a result. Hey, we had 10 leads, 2 of them were booked appointments. That's 20%. That's a KPI right there to keep it simple. But really what matters more to the roofer is jobs closed. As a marketer, we could say, oh, we book 100% booking rate. And then you as a roofer say, well, no one was home and everyone was dead broke. Doesn't matter that I got 100% booking rate because you got 0 sales. And so one of the interesting things that we discovered, and really actually probably one of the sadder stories of one of our clients that we worked with, and I felt, there was nothing we could do, unfortunately. And the story was that we do appointment reminder calls with all of our clients, all of our contractors. And one day, and this probably happened, I can't give you a number how often this happens, but I'm sure it happened more often than not. We just didn't know about it because no one had ever called back. We had these leads that were calling back to us saying that no one showed up for the appointment. And I think I was telling you this story, and I'm sure this isn't the first time. It won't be the last, unfortunately. And we created a process around this now. We had leads calling back and said, hey, someone in both English and Spanish, I speak Spanish. And so these leads is down in like Miami, Florida area. Leads are calling back saying that no one came to the house. Someone had done a reminder call. And now these old people were upset that they wasted their time waiting for a roofer to come by. No one came by. So roofer reaches out to the marketer and us and, hey, what's going on kind of thing. And I'm like, well, my best instinct was, let me talk to these people. Let me not ignore these phone calls coming in. So I actually hit the phones myself. And I said to my team, I said, let me handle this one. I called them up. I said, hey, what happened exactly? They said, you guys called to remind me. I don't know who you're with. And they were upset. And I'm trying to diffuse it. I'm trying not to get a bad review at all for any kind of roofing company. I'm just taking responsibility for it. I don't even know what specifically even happened other than we made a reminder call. I'm like, look, I take responsibility for this. Whatever we can do to make it right, I'll make it right. And I apologize. Nothing happened. So you're telling me No one came out to the house. So like, no, you guys called, and they don't know that we're an outside part of the roofing company. I said, okay, so we called, reminded you, and no one showed up. Nope. Tell the roofer. Roofer finds out that his sales guy's milking time, not going to jobs. And it sucks. It really sucked on this specific one because this guy was like, I've got to fire my best friend. And I'm like, damn. And, best friend, I'm assuming was probably salary, was skipping out on jobs, not going to this. I'm thinking to myself, these roofers, they spend thousands of dollars on leads. Now they've got our service, an additional cost, or maybe we're integrated into their service. So they're basically throwing money away, unfortunately, is the best way to put it. And then their salesperson, whether it's their best friend or just a person that they hired, isn't even going to the jobs. And to make matters worse, that salesperson is then trying to influence the roofer, telling them, let's go back to door knocking. Why? Because they can stretch out their hours door knocking and collect a check. And I was like, holy smokes, my mind exploded because we used to hear this from these roofers that their salespeople would say to the roofer owner, these leads, man, these appointments, we should just go out the door knocking. And now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that is a very viable method if you can't afford marketing. But when you got to look at the big picture, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, these MFers, I was like, they will say the appointment is bad, and they will say the marketing stinks, and the roofer owner is going to trust their long-term employee or whatever employee that's going on the jobs versus the marketing company they hired. And they never even went to the appointment. So we're even starting to test right now a survey after the appointment to see how the appointment went. And then I want to hear from them. Oh, hey, Johnny Smith never even showed up. Oh, really now? And the part that sucks, to be honest with you, is once we find that out, we lost the client probably at that point. But I'd rather a client know the truth and me be the bearer of bad news than, just try to be another, person that tries to hide a fact from someone to keep the sale. Because I guess what, at the long run, the honesty and integrity will win out every single time. And that roofer is going to remember that. Sure, it's going to stink. They got to find a new person. They're probably going to pull his services. But they're going to remember that, like, hey, James and his team, they were at least honest with me. And that goes a long way in this industry, especially in 2023. Yeah,
there's a lot of levers to pull along the way. It's that's a big factor. Like, hey, is the person showing up? Are the people following up? I've seen it a lot of times in companies or sales reps that are really good at door to door. They're really good at getting the next lead. And so a lot of times their efficiency isn't in the follow-up, right? Because they're like, I'll just keep knocking. Someone's going to sign. Like, I'll just keep doing more activity on this side. But there's so much juice that can be squeezed out of the follow-up with the customers, right? So you have your inbound phone calls. Inbound lead comes in. There's that appointment set. That's an appointment. That's an important aspect of the puzzle. Now you have your appointment reminder call. Mm-hmm. Sales rep goes out, does the inspection, does the estimate. Now there's the follow-up on that. And of course you want your inside sale or your sales rep to handle a lot of that. In some of the more successful contractors that we work with and that I know of, one of them specifically, they allow the sales rep that ran the appointment, that ran the lead, they'll give them 2 weeks. They get 2 weeks with that lead to close that deal. If not, it gets kicked back to an inside sales rep that then hammers follow up and makes, and tries to get that deal closed. And within that, they've seen a huge amount of success. I've also had Martin Pettigrew on our podcast, who a couple of times wrote the book The Roofing Machine. And that's their system too. They have outside sales reps and inside sales reps. I don't know their specific flow, but the combination of both, because that outside sales rep needs to keep running more appointments. And sometimes you get bogged down in the next appointment and then you lose your time on your follow-up. So all of it gets important. So let's talk about kind of what to say on these calls. Let's start on that initial call. on that appointment set, I hear way too, like for me, it's crazy the stuff that we hear on phone calls. I've heard people just answer the phone, roofer, right? Like, or
My
hello?
like, what do you want? It's my favorite.
Hello? Right? Like with a tone, like, come on, man, like you're a business accepting. So what are some of the best practices that you put into place with your team, that make that professional, that increase that professionalism and really dial in that initial phone call to make that person feel welcomed?
Yeah, first identifying the lead. You'd be surprised how often, it's not like 50%, it's less than that, but you'd be surprised how often, wife will fill it out as the husband, or husband will fill it out as the wife, or vice versa, sister for their mom or whatever, and let's just say daughter for their mom. And so first identify who the lead is. If I was talking to Jim right now, I'd say, hello, Jim. Then identify yourself. And any roofer listening, you can literally turn this into your script and start calling today. I told Jim when I came on here, I wanted to give actionable stuff that people could implement right away. First identify the lead, state who you are. Hey, this is James Baskin with Outsource Kings, or, XYZ roofing company. And then identify where you found them from. You were recently on our Facebook page and you had filled out their information. So that's where I call the accountability and ownership on the lead. There's no hide in that. If the lead was just filled out 30 minutes ago and you said, hey, you emailed us about contacting you, or hey, you filled out something on Facebook and you gave us your information, there's like that accountability ownership part, which if they say, no, I didn't, you don't want to get in an argument with them, of course, but at the same point, I always say Facebook rather than like our Facebook business page. I just say Facebook because everyone knows that, oh yeah, I was on Facebook, I filled something out. And they've also probably filled out 5 other leads with 5 other companies between now and the time you've contacted them. And so, I've identified who they are, I've identified who I am and what I do, and then I also identify where I found them. And so they're going to be receptive or not right off the bat. No, I never filled that out. Okay, so you weren't on our Facebook recently looking for information about, roofing quotes? No, I'm not interested. Take me off your list. Okay, I'm not going to argue with those people. They're not going to be a good fit. And so, so the first thing is identifying who the person is, who I am, and the reason for why I'm calling. And the reason for why I'm calling is because you recently filled out one of our, leads or ads on Facebook. You recently found our Facebook business page, and, paraphrasing different things than the way we say them. And I'm calling to get you that information and help get you set up. And then go straight into the questions that you would normally ask. What's the age of your roof? Are you working with an insurance company? Are there any specifics? Are you looking for a metal roof? Are you looking for those kind of things? And then we just get that information and we ask those questions. Each person's different. Some roofers are like, hey, it's always interesting in different parts of the country. Some roofers are like, we're 100% metal only. Some are, different ways. And it always, baffles me with how just different people are. But yeah, really getting clear on their information and what they're looking for, and then set the time. Great, I've got all your information. And then the availability of your schedule, whatever software you're using, even if you're using something as simple as Outlook, look at what tomorrow looks like. Have that in front of you before you make the phone call, because you don't want to be just sitting there like, oh, hold on 1 second. And you're like, oh, I can do it's like, hey, you want it just to smoothly flow. And if you're driving, to keep it simple for you guys that are driving and you're on the road because you're a one-man shop. And I always think about the roofer that's a one-man shop. I spoke to a guy that was 84 years old, and he told me, I'm going to do the voice because one of my clients loves when I do this voice, one of my roofer clients. We called this guy, and he's like, I just do one job at a time, just one job at a time. And I was like, so you just do one job? And he's like, and then I'll sell the next one. And I'm like, God bless you, man. And so I say that because my heart goes out to those people because I understand that. So it's like, if you're just doing one job at a time, when you're booking that next job, just have your phone or your calendar open. Hey, even if it's a paper calendar, hey, I can do tomorrow at 3:00. I can come by and stop by. Does that work for you? Yes, it does. And then verify their address. That's a huge thing. Verify their address, make sure that you have the correct address, and then you're all set. And then you can do that reminder call, even if you're doing it yourself. And I've kind of just given like the 2-minute blip of how to like set up an appointment. If you're just, only able to do it in-house and you're only able to, do it yourself.
Now, what are you saying on the reminder call?
Yeah. Once again, we're reminding them of their appointment. Hi, this is Jim. I'm calling to remind you with your appointment at 3:00. If we're doing it in the morning, for instance, we're calling before 10 a.m.
Same day before. What's the best practice there?
I prefer to do both. Some people only want us to do the day of. Once we get into working with the client, some of them are like, hey, can you just do it the day of? But if you have limited time to make the phone calls, whatever one is going to be the most convenient. Day of is preferred. But if you're like, hey, as soon as the morning happens, I'm go, do it the evening before when you're finishing your day. So it's like, 6:00 at night or whatever. And you're like, hey, this is James Baskin from XYZ Roofing Company. Jim, I'm calling to confirm our appointment for tomorrow at 3 p.m. Are you still good for tomorrow? Yes, I am. Great. Your address is 123 Main Street, just to confirm? Yes, it is. Great. We'll see you at 3:00 tomorrow. And then I like to add this little thing that I always say is, please don't forget about us. We won't forget about you. And it's like, and people like that. There's a lot of cadences that people can do. One thing that I'm still working with my team on, and this is where the skill set comes in with a strong setter on the phone, is where you start to basically instruct people, hey, do you have a minute? Can you just grab a piece of paper and write this down? And then I subconsciously want them to write it down. If I'm being honest with everyone, including yourself and your audience, it's like we're not doing that 100% of the time, because that can actually have some pushback from people.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, I want that. But at the same time, with show up rate and, when we're hearing from clients, things are going good, I don't want to push back too hard. But yeah, that's what we say over the phone. Depending on how busy the roofer is, if they're doing it themselves, if we're doing it for the roofer, just to, get direct to your question, if we're doing it for the roofer, we're doing it the same day. So that way they're going out. If the roofer goes over 100 miles for a job, which is just crazy to think about that some roofers are going that far, but if they're going over 100 miles for a job, the practice that we do is 2 hours before. So 2 hours before the appointment, we're actually calling and we're verifying that they're going to be home, because that roofer, if they're driving 2 hours to get there, I want to make sure they don't get no-showed. And so it's like, we're definitely calling not only the same day, but 2 hours before to make sure that they're definitely home. And that comes from my own personal experience as an insurance agent when I got stood up for going 2 hours. I had a really big job that I was going to go sell. And then I was like, all right, I'm turning this into a process for myself.
Yeah, and and just making all those phone calls, but we all get busy during the day, right? So having those processes in place for your team or using some outside service, whatever that is, making sure that those calls happen. What are your thoughts on qualification, right? Because I know a lot of times, especially when contractors are busy, they're like, look, I only want to go out to as qualified an appointment as possible, right? And so what questions can their team ask maybe to help to determine if this is a qualified, like a prospect that's, more willing to buy or can afford it or can qualify for financing or, however that would be?
Yeah. So, some of the questions that you can get into, and don't quote me on the financing side of things, because I think there's, some things you can say, some things that you cannot say. So when it comes to financing, one of the things that we like to do without getting into their credit score is we ask them, how would you rate your credit? Excellent, good, fair, poor. And that's one way to kind of soft qualify versus like, what's your credit score? That's going to get some pushback. Another way is to ask them the square footage of the home. Some roofers, they don't want to do a small job, so we ask them the square footage of the home. Some roofers, they don't want super high. This is always so weird when this happens, and it's very rare, but it's like, is this a 2-story home? Some roofers are like, we don't want to do super high up stuff. So that's one qualification also. And then what's your budget is going to be the number one question. I probably could have started with that one, but what's your budget is the number one. It makes sense. It's very easy to ask. Oh, we're looking only to spend less than 10,000, or oh, are you working with insurance? And that can be like a kind of setup before the budget question. No, we're not looking for insurance. Oh, well, what's your budget? Nothing. We're hoping the government pays for this. It's like, well, ma'am, the government does not just pay for your roof. That's not how this works. And so you're not working with insurance. Unfortunately, this is probably not going to be a good fit. But the insurance question, if they've already, started the process with insurance as well, and that's going to help set up that budget question. And then having the range of the budget that the roofer wants to work with. Sometimes they might do additional stuff like siding, windows. Those usually go hand in hand. Gutters sometimes with the roofers that they want to do things. And it's like, okay, so what's your budget? Well, for the roof, we were looking for this. For the windows, we were looking for XYZ. For the siding, this. And it's like, okay, that's a really good quality lead appointment calling. And they've set aside some time to dictate how much money they're going to spend for each thing. And now we've had it down to where the roofer will do XYZ replacement for this much money, but then we find out even more. And it's like, okay, so were you looking for a full roof replacement? No, I was just looking for these couple shingles. Well, that's not worth their time either. So It's like, we don't want to just find out like they want, a repair. We want to find out specifically, is this a full roof repair? No, this is for one shingle. Well, man, that's, probably not going to be the best time for anyone. But yeah, budget is going to be the biggest question. And then the size of the job is probably the second one.
What about on on the appointments that don't confirm? Do you think it's a valuable activity to continue to follow up with those people?
100%. We call that a reschedule. So we keep on calling them for our clients and we attempt to reschedule. And we don't even, bring up the fact that they didn't confirm their appointment. I'm not here to shame anyone. Yeah. Things happen. You know what I mean? We've had just all kinds of crazy stories of, just client tells us one of their biggest deals happened from a reschedule. And then we find out that the person rescheduled because their car broke down in the middle of the rain. The last thing that person's doing is answering their phone from us. Oh, I can't make it today. It's like they're in the middle of the rain, car broke down, waiting for AAA or whatever happened. It's like the last thing that they're worried about is confirming their roofing appointment. And so it's like, you never want to shame people. So we just keep following up with the people. We get confirmation from the roofer of who on their list, no-showed or who canceled or what, or who had to reschedule. Like, let's say, for instance, they go out to the house, kid gets sick, was sent home from school. They confirm their appointment the morning of. Things happen, right? Life happens to all of us quickly. And it's like, oh, hey, we went out to that appointment and they couldn't meet with us. Or the roofer. Roofers have families too, right? Oh, hey, I know you confirmed for so-and-so. Could you please just reschedule them? So we just call and we reschedule these people. Some people, especially if we've already done the confirmation call, they're not too thrilled. But at the same time, life happens. People get it. And then, we just reschedule the people and then we just go on their calendar. We simply reschedule it. And then the process starts again. If we reschedule it from Monday to Thursday, we're doing that confirmation call just like it was a regular lead.
I've seen that. I've my Adam Bensman, the roof strategist that I've worked with a lot, we talked about on the podcast one time, he calls it the cable guy method, right? So, hey, are you available, 8 to 11, 11 to 1, 1 to 3, right? So you just give them these windows and you can book into these windows. Mm-hmm. And then if you need to reschedule, you could call back and say, hey, I'm not available, or our team, or our sales rep is not available at that time. Can we do 1 o'clock instead of noon or whatever, right? So sometimes getting that initial booking on there, and that might be a way, like you'd mentioned earlier, when you're in your truck, right? You just give them some windows, and hey, we're available in this time frame, this time frame, this time frame. Get it booked on the calendar. And then if you need to reschedule, people might not everyone's going to be happy that you're rescheduling, but if you have to reschedule, just go back there from your side, right? Because like you're saying, stuff comes up. That makes perfect sense. Now, what other places in the customer journey can this outreach, from their CSR team, from their, through phone calls, through text messages, what other places are you seeing that you could squeeze some more juice out of all these deals?
Yeah, I think the people working with insurance is probably a big one to find out where they're at in the insurance process. We really started doing this about what I'm going to talk about with insurance real quick, briefly. Happened with a solar client, and very rarely do we work with solar people at this point anymore. But the only time we ever do is with this exact process I'm going to talk about, is when, not so much for insurance for solar, but the collecting documents, which applies to solar as well. Which applies to roofing as well with insurance people. So with these solar companies in the past, it was like, hey, can you call these people to see like where they're at with collecting documents for their energy bill and this and that. And so I tied that into roofing, and that was for the insurance process, was like, hey, you go out to a job and they tell the marketer, oh, well, this person's an insurance deal and it's going to take a while, blah, blah, blah. They're just not thrilled, but it's like, hey, you know what? This person's not just sitting there with a check ready to write to you. That's not, sometimes some places we work with, I always forget how it's phrased exactly, which is people that are paying versus insurance. And I forget how the roofing industry describes
retail versus
I always forget that word. I don't know why. So it's like some people are like, we're 100% retail. Some people tell us we're 90% insurance, 10% retail. Probably usually the hailstorm areas. And so it's like, where are they at with that document process? If they're the retail customer, do they have the cash for it? Are they going to need financing? Now that's the second topic I'm going to mention. So insurance, collecting documents is the one part. Do you have, as a roofer, a finance company set up for these people? And where are they at with getting financing? Some roofers, they can get the person approved with, there's a whole bunch of different companies out there. I'm not going to name them all, but some of them can get approved on the spot and they can get a decision. Some people might take a little bit of time and the person's got to do something and they've got to do X, Y, Z. And it just doesn't happen while you're in their home. So you want to find out where are they at with the financing process. It's like, if you can get them approved right on the spot, you can make that sale. Some roofers tell us that it's going to, they're not happy about it. They've got to go back another day. It's like, well, that's sometimes going to be a part of the sales process. Jim's shaking his head because he knows and probably have heard this before. And so it's like, that's going to be part of the sales process. You've got to follow up with that person. Hey, where are we at with this? Have you collected those documents? Have you sent them in for, the insurance claim? Oh, no, we're still working on getting that. Okay, well, guess what? Now the follow-up process begins. It's like, I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm willing to bet it's probably less than 20% of these roofing deals are closed in the home, probably less than 10%, really. And it's like, the next part is as I saw with one of my neighbors in Florida, who was just collecting quotes, as I call it. And she had every single roofer come out to the house. And I just watched all these roofers. And I do my calls outside when I'm in Florida. And I was just watching all these roofers come out to the house. And I was just kind of internally shaking my head because I was like, these guys are thinking they're walking into a sale, but they're the 10th quote so far today. and so I was thinking to myself, who's following up after that quote? You know what I mean? These guys, I just watched them all walking up. Not all of them were like this, but some of them were just hot shots, having fun. And, roofing in Florida, especially after our last hurricane, there are a lot of roofs that were getting replaced, and these guys were selling them like candy. And I'm like thinking to myself, how many of these guys are actually going to follow up for a second time? Probably could have sat out there and just offered my service. And the funny story is that one guy on the roof actually heard me talking, doing a sales call, and booked an appointment with me. The weirdest, funniest story I've ever had with the guy literally heard me and came down after he was like, finished looking at the damage and was like, hey man, what do you do for roofers? And you just hear me do phone calls. And I'll say this is following up after the appointment is probably the primary. So insurance, collecting documents. The other one is going to be financing, helping them with the financing along the journey. And then really the most important part is just following up after the sale, the fortunes in the follow-up, there's all these cliche sayings and stuff like that. But most of these other roofing companies, they're going there once. If they don't make the sale, off to the next lead. You've already spent money to generate the lead with the marketer, or whether it's your own marketing services that you've done. And it's like, follow up with that person, see where they're at. I hear horror stories of people that went with the cheapest company just because the cheapest company was the one that called one more time versus the company that was the most expensive. And they never even, and then the cheapest company had holes in the Florida, unfortunately, were notorious for this. These guys that come through and they take advantage of the elderly. And, the cheapest company sometimes wins. And that more expensive company, they just called one time and that was it. So it's like, don't be that person that, just calls once, follow up, of course.
Yeah, that making sure that follow-up happens, ensuring that follow-up happens you're going to find so much better, how do I want to put it, man? Like so much more efficiency in your business, so much more success from your roofing business, just in those little things, in those little details, in making sure that those calls are made and making sure that you have the speed to the lead, you have the follow-up on those leads, you're following up on those appointments that no-showed you. It's squeezing the juice, man. You gotta, at each point of this, there is more revenue to be made in each of these things. The post-sale call you mentioned also, that's asking for reviews and referrals. And there's so many places where there is more money in that process, but by just picking up that phone, at least sending text messages, like doing some of that follow-up. James, what do you think the greatest insight is that you can share with our audience that can help them put these processes together?
Great question. I think I would look at what you're doing now and look at the things that you think have worked and be realistic, honest self-appraisal of your business. Look at the things that work, look at the things that have not worked. If you've hired 5 marketing companies and it's always been their fault, chances are it's not their fault. If you've gone through 10 different salespeople and it's always been their fault, chances are it's probably your fault. And so honest self-appraisal first, and we all have this, including myself. This is not meant to sound like, Mr. Roofer that's listening that you're wrong. I have this, I have to do this for my own self. So first I would, do honest self-appraisal. And so in terms of the process that we talked about, I would look at, going back to how we started, frequency, how often do you call the people, and speed, how fast do we call people? And if you're sitting there and you're like, man, well, I just call them when I get the chance. I don't have a system. I really only call them once, or I answer the phone when I'm available. Well, then you probably need some outside help to do that. And then that paints a whole other question with, are you ready to hire someone and build it internally? That's an overtake, and we help with all that, of course. But really, you have to ask yourself, is this something that I want to build internally, or is this something I want an outside company to handle? And then the next part is going to come down to, how do you want that process to look like in your business? Some people, they don't do insurance. Some people, they don't have a finance company. So they wouldn't make sense for the insurance and finance follow-up. They just do one sale at a time and they're looking for retail. And it's like, some people, they don't do metal roofs. Some people have told us we only do metal roofs. So you got to figure out what's specific for you and what makes sense, and then create that process around your business. I can tell you that if you follow up the most, you're gonna, get the job. But some people, they might say, hey, I don't have enough time to follow up. Okay, well then you've got to make a decision. Can you afford to have someone else follow up for you, with the hope and expectation and understanding that if you do that, there'll be more deals that come down the pipeline. And that's making that decision with that self-appraisal. Because if you don't make that honest self-appraisal first, it's always going to be someone else's fault. Oh, these people, they don't buy. And that they get back to the way that I said it. Let's go back to door knocking. It's like, okay, like, look, I get it. Like, that is a very easy method that, there's no cost to it. Congrats. But is your time worth that? And is your crew worth it, kind of thing? And so, it first comes down to, when I say honest self-appraisal, that also encompasses knowing your numbers, KPIs, as Jim talked about early on, kind of full circle with how we've talked. It's like, know your numbers. Hey, you know what? We realistically, we only close at 15%. We thought we were 50%. When we really got truthful with ourselves, we're 15%. And, we need to find out, like, what are we doing during the appointment? Is our roofer on time? What's his etiquette like? There's so many moving parts that come into it, but I think the first thing is just you being honest with yourself if you're the business owner.
Awesome, man. James, appreciate your time today. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.